Welcome, everybody, to the coveted 2:15 on Saturday slot. We had to pay extra for this one because, yeah, I mean, the demand was so high. Today our session is Shoestrings, Subgraphs, and Sharing, which is an interesting title because it sort of implies that these three presentations have very little to do with one another. I think we may as well just come right out and say it. Let's not pretend. But what we have here are three kind of new models for thinking about the way we produce material in museums and the way we think about data and sharing. And so because we don't have a really strong thematic link between the presentations, we're going to kind of have everybody go say their piece, and then we'll do the Q&A for each session or each presenter individually after each one, rather than holding the questions until the end. And we'll kind of keep things moving along, since I know everybody's pretty drifty at this point in the conference, and we accept that, and that's fine. First up is Jeffrey Inscho. And I left my notes as to what your actual title is, so there was no reason for me to even keep those notes. I'm sorry, Jeff. Manager of Digital Initiatives? Is that close? I'm sorry. At the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for attending this afternoon. My name's Jeff, and I am the manager of digital engagement at the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. I do want to apologize up front about a scheduling snafu that will require me to leave right after this to get to the airport for a 5 o'clock flight. So, if you have questions after the presentation, that's great. If you have questions after that, email or Twitter or whatever. I've only been at the Warhol for about a month. Prior to that, I spent several years at the Carnegie Museum of Art, managing web and digital initiatives, also in Pittsburgh. CMOA and the Warhol are 2 of the 4 Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh. Anytime you're asked to talk about your work, especially in the context of addressing problems in kind of an honest and productive and pragmatic way, it's a delicate balance between walking institutional line and like digging into the meat of the issues. So me being in this kind of strange state of freshly severed from CMOA and new guy on the Warhol totem pole adds an extra layer of awkward on this for me, but we'll get through it. We'll do it. It'll be good. Related, CMOA is a pretty awesome place to work. If you're looking for a new MuseTech gig, that's a link to the job posting with a description. So, yeah, it's a wonderful team, good position. Okay. Now that we have some housekeeping out of the way, let's get to it. Like a majority of you, museums and technology are my thing, right? Working at the intersection of art and experiences is really what gets me going. And I'm sure most of you do. I live and breathe this stuff. However, doing what we do is also pretty difficult. It comes with its fair share of obstacles, challenges, roadblocks. And working with cultural nonprofits, particularly inspiring innovation within them, is difficult for a number of reasons. There are often financial and organizational hurdles, right? As well as internal skill gaps. In my experiences, though, I've found that a little bit of ingenuity and some digital duct tape can go a long way to help cash and labor-strapped institutions ship some truly innovative things. So, as cultural technologists, I think the most important question we can ask before we do anything is ask the question why. Show of hands, how many of you heard things like this? We'd like a touchscreen interactive on this wall in this exhibition. This program needs its own website. Can we get an app for that? Okay, right? Sometimes the answer to these questions is yes, right? There's certainly instances where an exhibition or project warrants digital interaction and technology. If it didn't, we would all be out of a job. But I think the answer of yes should only be reached after we interrogate this question of why. Why should we employ technology in this instance? How will a technology-based solution achieve an interpretation goal that lo-fi or analog efforts can't? What are the expectations of this technology across time and space? Now, this is kind of weird and a bit strange for a technologist like myself to say, but I'm of the opinion we should only entertain technology as a potential solution when all other options have been exhausted. Only if we can effectively answer this question of why. So, once the decision to move forward with a technology-based solution has been made, a whole new set of challenges must be faced, right? If step one is asking the question why, step two is asking the question how. How can we afford it? When can we fit this into our already overtaxed staff? Who can build it? Who can maintain it? Who can fix it when it inevitably breaks? How can we convince leadership it's worthwhile and shepherd it through the approval process? So all of these questions rise up once technology gets involved. So it's important to acknowledge these obstacles and explore ways of mitigating them. Let's look at some major problems, I think, that are currently facing cultural nonprofits as they implement digital initiatives and think about some effective solutions. So the first problem that likely comes to mind when you think about things like this is cost, right? Digital displays, iPads, custom software development, underlying infrastructure can all be cost prohibitive for cash-strapped organizations. At CMOA and the Warhol, we found some successes combating financial hurdles by implementing the following. Starting scrappy. In startup circles, there's an initialism called MVP. How many of you have heard about this? Yes? Minimum viable product. And what a minimum viable product is something that it has the highest return on investment compared to the risk associated with it, right? Shipping an MVP puts something out into the world that's stable and usable and allows for quickly iterating on that thing. So starting out crappy, not crappy, scrappy. I knew I was going to do that. You can start out crappy too, I guess. But starting out scrappy with an MVP mindset, it can apply to your entire approach. It can be infused in your approach. This image is of our multimedia producer hacking DIY lens cases out of padding, foam padding, and duct tape in 2013, right? After delivering quality content with the limited resources we had available, we were able to document the value of the work and build upon these scrappy efforts. 1 year later, here we are filming 300 meters underground inside the Atlas detector at CERN on location in Geneva, Switzerland. We were able to secure funding necessary for this project by standing on the shoulders of the scrappy solutions we shipped a year earlier. We were able to purchase real travel equipment, and our gear and we got some actual real lens cases after that. Embracing the open source movement. You guys know this. Many open source frameworks are out there to be used. Things like WordPress, Ruby on Rails, Drupal, jQuery. While they're financially free, they do take some investment to maintain, right? You got to have somebody that knows what they're doing with it. But in addition to using open source frameworks, I think we should be having the discussions about contributing back to the community in ways like open source. This not only positions institutions as leaders in the field, but it goes a long way to establish goodwill and is also very attractive to funders. Leveraging prototypes. I think by building upon small wins, we enable our projects to mature into future phases and new projects. Through this, we're able to showcase previous work in grant proposals as we pursue more sophisticated programs. Case in point is this project at CMOA, Oh Snap, Your Take on Our Photographs. This was an experimental MVP, right, that had literally no budget. And we were able to leverage the success of this project into larger scale, more adequately funded projects like the Hillman Photography Initiative at Carnegie Museum of Art. Creating revenue generators with our technology. We've recently been working very hard at creating digital initiatives that are revenue generators instead of revenue sucks. For example, the Andy Warhol Museum's screen test machine. On the museum's 6th floor, we invite visitors to create their own Warhol-inspired screen tests. Actually, the machine is a hacked Bolex 16 millimeter, and we hooked it up to a touchscreen interactive that allows visitors to operate this and record their own screen tests. Once it's complete, the video is pushed to the web. It's also delivered to the user via email where they can share it with Facebook and Twitter. Initially developed as a one-off gallery interactive for the museum, we've scaled the project outward toward a rental business model. So museums are renting these from us now. We're sending them all over the world. And we're also working directly with brands. There's one in YouTube Space New York right now, where YouTube stars with more than 10,000 followers can go in and use their facility. One of our machines is in there, and it's pushing our content out through those channels. All right, let's face it, we all work really hard, right? Some of us fill 2 and 3 positions. We all wear a lot of hats. Adding a layer of technology on top of all of this, can be an impossibility for a lot of organizations. To me, personally, staff churn is the most important issue we should be talking about as a group here. Some things that may help. I don't know that they will, but embracing philosophies like design thinking. How many of you heard of design thinking? Yeah. Design thinking is a mindset and a methodology for fostering creativity and solving complex problems with innovative solutions through disparate and teams, essentially. Getting many voices around the table to roll through problems and roll through projects. Brings new voices to the equation early, hopefully helps establish project scope early on, and aligns the team around a manageable goal. More information about design thinking can actually be found on a great site called designthinkingformuseums.net, published by Dana Mitroff-Silvers, who is here at this conference. So you might want to find her if you're interested in it. Another thing is, similar to design thinking, some museums are infusing digital elements throughout their institutions and not relying on the silo of the digital department to basically be a service for the entire institution. This allows organizations to be more organic and fluid and have a more holistic relationship with technology. One of the best resources, in my opinion, about this approach is the Tate's digital strategy for 2013 to 2015. It's called Digital as a Dimension of Everything. Another big problem for museums is acquiring and retaining high-quality digital talent, right? Technology moves fast, and it's important to have a staff that can keep up. No matter where a museum falls on the spectrum of technology, there needs to be some level of internal awareness with respect to the digital landscape. We can start small. I'm fond of saying that I've learned more from Google and lynda.com than I have through my entire university career. There are really smart people solving really hard problems and writing about it on the internet. The solutions are out there. I think we can just find them. Another thing we can do is make friends in real life. not on the internet. It's easy to get caught up in the insularity of what we do, keep our heads down and focused on the work. But events like this, social gatherings like drinking about museums, various technology sector meetups. These things exist for people to come together and share knowledge, and we need to use them more. We can also work locally. This goes hand in hand with my previous comment, but if you do contract out, work locally. Many museums have big market complex, right? They regularly seek out agencies in New York and LA. But having local technologists in your Rolodex to call and discuss projects with is super valuable. And if you decide to source tech expertise outside the organization, work with small, hungry vendors that consider your project a big one for them. Often you'll get more attention for your budget, and you'll both have a product at the end that you want to use as a showpiece. I debated about whether or not to include this one, but if we're speaking freely, the topic of leadership needs to be addressed. Fortunately, both CMOA and the Warhol have really supportive leadership that gives digital staff the tools, resources, priority, and authority to operate with effectiveness. However, this isn't the case for many museums. Technology needs a voice at the adult table. In order for digital initiatives to be woven into the fabric of an organization's mission, it needs an advocate during those high-level discussions that take place during a project's infancy. Maybe it's a CIO, maybe it's a digital manager. It's got to be somebody. And once technology is at the table, be an interpreter. Like Max noted in his great Ignite talk earlier this week, speak to your directors in a language they can understand, free of jargon and addressing the bottom line in which they're interested, whether it's crowds or buzz, or if it's money or what. You got to speak on those terms. So there isn't a magic bullet, but hopefully these little tidbits and little strips of digital duct tape can help you as you guys move forward. Everything I said and showed and links to everything I talked about is at that URL right now. And if you have questions or comments, let's talk. I'd like to hear how some things are working with you guys, if we have time, right? Cool. Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Hey, hey.
I wonder. I'm really curious about the how the Warhol self-portrait turned into a sort of rental model. Can you go into a little bit more detail about how that evolved? Like, I mean, was that something that you thought might happen right from the get-go, or was it sort of a serendipitous thing? And how did that work?
Well, I've only been at the Warhol a month, but I do have the backstory on that project. We are very interested in looking at, so from the beginning, we kind of knew that's the direction it was going to take. And the MVP was the machine we built for our space. We're very interested in pushing initiatives that are sustainable financially. And this is just one way that was sustainable for us. So we have a fleet of them, actually. We have 5 or 6 machines that are all over the world at this point. And as exhibitions pop up, we can build more. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Well, there's Warhol exhibitions. I mean, that's one of our business. Our business model is, exhibitions out in the world at other institutions. So when an exhibition goes out, that's an option for them to bring interactives as a menu item, essentially. No, it's okay. Yeah.
And so, once those things are sort of built out, the way you're describing it, it almost sounds like that's like the option to take is part of kind of the registrar's contracting process.
Exactly, it is.
Do they basically manage that equipment now effectively too, or?
They support it while it's on their location. We basically optimize it for the location and get it all together and before it goes in the crate to be shipped. If they have problems and things, we can remote in and address, but most of the time it's plug and play. No? All right. Oh, okay, cool. This could be a MuseoPunks podcast.
I recognize that you may want to wade into this tentatively, but let's talk about your leadership slide a little bit.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could kind of go into, from your perspective, when you say like we have a bit of a leadership issue, and that's part of the reason that maybe we're not taking advantage of opportunities that are there, that are more available than we might think they are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as kind of the real issue? Like what's the change that you'd be looking for? Like what would that look like to you?
Well, I know I have more experience with this at the Museum of Art than I do at the Warhol, but a director who acknowledges that technology is important to have as a part of the discussion from the get-go. Before an exhibition gets to a checklist, technology is part of the conversation about how interpretation is going to be formulated, marketing, everything. So I think that would be a big first step. And I don't know what percentage of institutions that happens in, but that's a good first step, I think.
But given that, it sounds like at Carnegie you had some success with being at that.
Right.
Involved with that. Was that sort of always the case, or would you say that there were specific things you did that sort of helped to earn your place?
Right. Yeah. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't the case. I mean, that evolved into that situation based on wins. I think based on things like OSnap, based on shipping a great mobile app. So seeing how technology can influence, open the door for technology to be in those discussions, for sure. Yep. Yeah? Okay.
All right, Jeffrey.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. I'll hang out for a little bit, but...
This is the presentation. Okay. I'm talking about MUSEUMSHARE tonight. Okay, yes. And MUSEUMSHARE is a spin-off of DUA Workshop. DUA Workshop is my company. It's a company which has been working in the interpretation field for 55 years. And it has been set up in 1959 by my dad in Milan, in the Cathedral of Milan, where our first client was the Cardinal Giovanni Battista Montini, who became Pope as Paul VI, so he has been our first client. And we have developed several apps and evolving this first machine during the year, and we got to the point to develop MUSEUMSHARE. MUSEUMSHARE is an Android iOS app, which is almost ready. It will be ready in a few months, and it is an app. It is a platform where museum can upload their content on their own. We love to talk about MUSEUMSHARE as an app to tell story, to talk to the community, and to be open, participatory, collaborative, and co-creative, which are words that I've heard several times in this day, and which is something we really want to do, but it's quite difficult, as I will say later, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here, to understand how you work with the chance to be open to the visitors, which is something very hard to do in Italy. So MUSEUMSHARE has a very easy to use CMS, and it is a CMS in which we have tried, from the one hand, to keep all the features of the app that I will show you later, which is an app with a customized one, so it's very complete with several features. Having, on the other hand, a very simple CMS that people without an expertise can use. And this CMS, as you can see, you can do several things like setting up several itineraries, uploading images, audio track, video track, text, set up augmented reality, geolocate maps, and customize everything like if it was a customized app. So you can set customize icons, color, everything, all the design. Then you can give name to each track and give all the feature of the track. Add several information like contact us, follow us, information, bookstore, ticket, link to the ticket store online. And then you can, it's very simple and very quick because you just upload the visual part in one language and you add all the languages and it's synchronized on its own. The app, I want to go a little bit through the app because the app is a quite complete one. It's not a very simple, of them. It has a menu. Then it has a geolocated map. This is what we have developed right now. We are installing it in these days in the Roman Forum in Rome. Then it has a keypad, so it's like a traditional audio guide because this is where we come from audio guides. So we want to keep this feature because it's quite important and easy to use. Then it has the chance to add text, so you can have a written comment to support the content of the whole app. You have, of course, audio tracks, video tracks. Then you have a function that we call My Visit that gives you the chance to pick your favorites before going to the museum. So you can do this online. And then when you get into the museum, you have your own tour already set up. Or you can pick your favorite while you are revisiting the museum so that you can, before starting or during, decide what you're going to do later. And you can have this after the visit. You can get this information via mail afterwards to remind you what you have visited, what you have liked or not. Then it has the photo taking function. In this day, I have heard a lot about in the session about data analysis that what people really like is sharing and their selfie inside their museum selfie. Now this is what we do. I have to say that when I went to the MoMA I went to the MoMA a few months ago again to try their app. And what I saw was amazing because not all, me also, we were all doing this. All. The museum was seen all through this filter, which was really amazing. And then there is obviously the function of social sharing because after you take the picture you want to share, but you can share also the items inside of the app that I've seen in this day. It has a very small impact, but I think it's anyway important because I have the feeling that this is something that will develop more in the next month. And then there are some more other features inside of this app, which is the iBeacon activation, the augmented reality, the computer vision, so that you can, I don't know if you are familiar with the computer vision, you can recognize the painting, recording their image inside of the app, so that while you walk through the museum, you just point your device and it recognizes the images. And then the dynamic HTML, which would be HTML for me, and that gives you the chance to update the app with all the information, and it automatically download it when you use it. Then this app has also data collection. So because we have done data collection since the very beginning with the audio guides, we have seen that this is something incredibly important for museums and also for us because we learn a lot from data. It's amazing, and it's also a way to get out the emotional part when we deal with museums. So when we say this commentary is too long, it's not because it's our feeling against the feeling of the director that wants to have a 10-minute comment on a painting. It's shown by, now I will show you the Coliseum data, and you will see. The data that we can have, so are the usage numbers, the usage number per tour, per language, then the most listened and the less listened track, the stop, how many times visitors stop the listening, the time they spent using, with the app and using the app, the item shared, the selfies shared, and then the Instagram picture they will share also, which is in progress. We have done a very interesting data collection in the Coliseum, which showed us very important thing that we didn't think about. This gives an idea of the usage. This is a very simple data that you can get in many other ways. Then we have how much time the different users spent with the app and using the app. And this is quite interesting because you see how deep some of them go into the app and using the app, and how some other do. And this is the track performance, which show what I was saying. These are all, actually I should have had the title and the length of all the track. These are all the tracks that are in the Coliseum, which are few because the Coliseum is a very short visit in itself. And as you've seen, almost all of them are stopped at half. People listen for them for half of the length, which means that or they are too long, or they are too boring, or that there is something wrong. And I have to say that they didn't listen to us because then we did the Roman Forum, and it is as long as the Coliseum was, but and then we got analysis about the different approach of visitors, which is incredibly interesting from my point of view, because you can see the Arab. The pink data is the times that they keep the listening, and they almost keep the listening immediately. Now they don't listen to it at all. While the Japanese are much more deep in their listening and in their attention to the comments. Then this app wants also to be crowdsourcing. And so technically it is crowdsourcing. It gives the chance to add audio, to add videos, to add photos, and to add text. Now about this, there is something to consider. We are really thinking about this aspect because from the technical point of view, it is really simple because it's a feature. It's enough to develop this feature and it's done. But what we are thinking about, particularly because we are based in Italy, is we are asking ourselves if museums are ready for co-creativity and co-curation, and if we should really open, since this is an app that will be downloaded for free, and then the museum, inside of this app, there will be all the other apps of the museum all together, and they can be for free or on payment. And we are asking ourselves, should we open the app, the MUSEUMSHARE app, to everybody? I mean, if there is someone, like a blogger, a partner of this project is a blogger, and she has produced an amazing app about the Uffizi. If we put the app of the Uffizi inside of MUSEUMSHARE, then what will the director of the Uffizi do? Will upload also his app, or if we are not talking of the Uffizi, if inside of MUSEUMSHARE there is the app of Alexandra Cori, will the director of the Cappella Sistina of the Vatican Museum upload his app? We are really thinking a lot about this, and have heard a lot in this day talking about this chance of being open or not, and I can tell you that you are 100 times more open than it is in Italy. So this is a feature that we have, but we don't know yet how and if developing, if leaving to the visitors only the chance to add content to the existing content. So if there is the app of the Uffizi and then I want to add my comment, fine, or if having the original. Then this MUSEUMSHARE will be ready in March 2015. And the first site that will be in MUSEUMSHARE will be the Church of San Mark in Venice, the Pantheon of Rome, and the Convent of St. Francis in Assisi. Then MUSEUMSHARE is another small thing, because at the beginning it wanted to be a lot of things. Then we have kept two of them for the moment, which is museumshare.guru, which is actually the website we have, which will be a special event that we want to do around Italy in impressive location, in museum, in churches, with a creative guru. And we will try to organize this as soon as MUSEUMSHARE will be online. We will try to have it to share not only digitally, but to share also the knowledge directly with people in our country. And that's it.
Well, for the first time presented in English, I thought that was great.
Yes, I was talking like a 10 years old kid. I know only a flat, without nuances language, but.
Are there questions here for Ilaria?
Yeah.
Well, my vote would be to open it up and give people a choice. But in doing that, one of the things I was wondering about is you showed a lot of geolocated photos. Where are you storing that stuff? And is it locally stored? And if so, would you be interested in contributing it to OpenStreetMap, where we would end up with a lot of OpenStreetMap photos of stuff around museums and in museums?
Yes, we are storing everything online, but when you download it on the app, it's on the device, because we don't have. I think that in 3,000 museums in Italy we have Wi-Fi in 50. So as people cannot download their own stuff with their own card, because you finish immediately your credit, your megabyte. Once you have downloaded, it's on the device.
I have a question sort of for you, Ilaria, and sort of actually for the room, because your model here brings up a bit of a concern for me. I'm not going to be harsh, but what I mean is that I think one problem that we have sector-wide is that I'm not convinced that each institution having its own mobile app is a fundamentally sustainable model. You know, especially since it's like you're often downloading an app for a single use, and then you don't visit that museum again for many years. That said, there have been many attempts to do multi-institution apps, you know, along the lines of what you're proposing, where you do a single model or a single application you have, none of which have yet to really take off. And so this is sort of a hard question. I don't know what question I'm asking.
But I have thought a lot of what you said, because I have studied all the other CMS stuff. Yeah. So we have discussed a lot of this. And you use the microphone. It was a trick not to listen to my English. No. We have thought a lot about this, because we have seen that many of the other apps doing more or less the same, even if some of them are very simple one, and we are trying to keep all the complexity of a customized app with a simple CMS, which is what we think make it a little bit different. And what we have, I don't know in your mind which are the reason why all these. I
don't know.
Yes, but we have thought that it is difficult to bring museum in, no? Because it's not simple to convince museum to be together in one place. So we have thought, we have been working in this field for 55 years. We have almost 1,000 of hours of content, which is a huge archive. So we have thought, if we start putting in MUSEUMSHARE everything we have produced, without, it will be already a huge interesting app, because we have our audio guide in Pompeii, in the Colosseum, in the Roman Forum, in the Cathedral of Florence, in the one of Milan, in the Capitolini in Rome, in the Marta in Rovereto. So we have so many museums that for us it's quite simple, because we are not starting now. We have not decided, let's do an app. We have decided, let's bring together all our content, and then we will see it. Once our app is completed with our content, maybe someone else will decide to be inside. So it comes from another path. So that's why we have tried, because otherwise, I agree with you, we have thought, why doing something that is not having success?
Can I try to complete your question?
Please, I really wish you.
I think one, it's a great idea and it looks fantastic. And what my concern is the opposite eventually. It's not how do you get the content there, it's how do you get the content out of there and eventually share it somewhere else. Because there's this amazing content which is then only functional if you go there. But there's the rest of the online activities that actually could benefit from.
And I think this is what Jim is sort of Jim's question is.
So there's a lot of content that there's this crowdsourcing component that creates content, but at the moment I haven't seen a plan for eventually taking that content back into the overall museum repository or wherever, which is probably an extension that you can easily do.
Yes.
Something to think about.
Yes, you're right.
So the website and all these experiences are not just limited to who's lucky enough.
We have started with the app. I mean, we do this in specific project. MUSEUMSHARE for the moment is just an app, but I think it's something we should take into consideration, because now the limit between apps, among apps and website and audio guide, it's gone. No, everything is melted. So I agree.
More questions?
Proponent of the crowdsourcing of museum guides. However, I'm just curious about moderation and set the responsibility of the individual locations. And
sorry, I didn't understand.
well, if you've got an application, which my understanding of that is that people can create essentially their own museum guides, which may contain commentary on their experience. How do you deal with moderation of that content to ensure that it's, there's got to be some level of professionalism?
Yes, we are.
Sorry,
we are doing both. We are thinking of doing both algorithm to control part of the moderation, and to have a professional doing this. So, because we want this to have high quality content in any way, even if they're unauthorized content, even if they're not the official. But as I said, we are still thinking, because we really love the idea of having it crowdsourced. And our big concern is this one. What will happen if we crowdsource our app? What will happen, how the market will respond to this? Because I've tried to propose, for instance, a crowdsourced app, another thing, to the Cathedral of Milan, because we have the Universal Expo next year and in Milan. We wanted to have something very contemporary, so we said to them, let's have people will come to Milan from all over the world from 6 months. Let's have them talking into this app. And they said, no way, we don't want anybody talking about ourselves. And I'm talking about churches, because my company works with big museums, but particularly with big churches. But now churches have directors as museum, the biggest one, I mean. So it's not because they are churches, because they are really worried about having people talking about themselves. So this is a big concern. Then the moderation is something that we want to, we have considered, and we will take a big care. A partner of mine will be the one who will take care of this personally, of going through this, unless it becomes huge, but I don't think, I hope, but I don't think.
Historically, moderation is not your problem. You typically have a much bigger problem with
Yeah.
where you just don't, you don't get a critical mass of content. Yeah, so if you have a problem with moderation, it's like,
Yes.
I
I hope we will have them.
Yeah.
I will come here asking for help for the moderation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So for about the next 20 minutes, I want to talk to you about two interrelated projects. The first one is SOFTALK Apple project, in which we're doing a definitive online digital archive of SOFTALK magazine, which basically captures the dawn of the microcomputer and digital age that we all live in today. That's the what of what we're doing, and the other side of the coin is FactMiners.org, which is the open source software community that at this point is Timlin and myself and some interest, but we're growing into a community that will be developing a libraries, archives, and museum-based social gaming platform that will be able to generate semantically rich models on archives like the SOFTALK Apple project. So before I talk a little bit about the projects themselves, to give you a sense of who Timlin and I are, and Timlin, my hero, she's here. We're citizen scientists / historians. It means that we are not museum informatics professionals. We're independent, unaffiliated, and it goes almost without saying, unfunded. But hopefully by this time next year, that won't be the case. If you were Oprah Winfrey or Barbara Waters and asked me for 3 phrases to describe who we are, I would say that we're passion-driven, because over the last 3 years, both Timlin and I have faced stage 4 cancer battles and won. And when you face your own mortality for any period of time and struggle back, you realize how precious life is, and that you've been given a bonus round. And so we're in our bonus round, and we have a lived-it enthusiasm for what we're doing, because what we're working on is a archive of the history that we lived. I was an entrepreneur throughout the digital age in various capacities. And because of that, I have an unusual tech background to bring to the museum informatics community. And now a little bit about you all to get a sense of the history scale that we're talking about. How many of you have completed all of your degrees before you had your first personal computer? Handful of us. I had a used electric typewriter for my master's thesis and thought I was cruising. How many of you had your first personal computer in college or in high school? And how many grew up literally not knowing of a time when you didn't have personal computers? In fact, most of the folks we meet today and that visit your museums and libraries and all, literally have grown up in a world where they don't know that there was life before Facebook. Oh, and by the way, that picture in the corner, I said I have a kind of Forrest Gump-like life through this history. I'm not rich or famous, but I've been there and done that with many folks who are. And after starting in Baltimore, I was a co-founder of Muse Software, one of the first microcomputer software companies. I had another company, an amazing company, lost that, and bankers kept saying, boy, if you were in California, maybe they'd understand you. So I went to SOFTALK magazine and literally said, wouldn't it be great if we put a computer in a car and drove around the country writing stories, and then we could end up in California? And they surprisingly said yes. So those are some pictures, which if you go to the SOFTALKapple.com website, you can read about our Soft Trek adventure. Now, okay. Oh, I'm getting heckled by my wife. Okay. It's hard to believe that, because we live in this 24/7 world where the internet, Facebook, and everything has been available to us. But before that, the world functioned around print documents. And for the microcomputer industry and for the digital age that was developing, that print publication was SOFTALK magazine. It was published for 4 years, from 1980 to 84. It consists of 48 issues. At the peak, those show you the number of pages. At its peak, it was 450 pages long, and it was extraordinarily interesting and broad content. And at its peak, it had a subscriber list of 250,000 people. If you bought an Apple computer, you were given a card to fill in and get a free 1-year subscription to the magazine. And back then, magazines were not just read by one person. Whole families and streets magazines. In fact, we have trouble finding decent copies to scan because they're so doggedly read and reread. So what we've got now, then, is a 48-month time capsule of the dawn of the microcomputer and digital revolution. And by capturing that and not only creating a digital archive, but looking to generate a machine-readable, fully fact cloud implemented semantic model of that is the goal of the project. And this is a magazine that here in the initial issue, we have an interview with George Lucas about how they used Apple computers and microcomputers behind the scenes to do Star Wars. But this is a magazine that also would have cover stories of simple people like chimney sweeps outside of Baltimore and how they used microcomputers to change their family business. Incredibly detailed articles on microcomputers in space and in the arts, and in every issue, incredibly detailed profiles of the companies that made the products that laid the foundation for the world we live in today. But the real meat of the content that's in there, again, there was no internet, no email, no Stack Overflow. The real meat of these issues is in all of the front matter and back matter of the magazine, all the departments, where we had things like pages of meticulously curated reports of what the producers of hardware and software were doing. Back when it cost as much to buy a computer as a late model car, who you bought the computer from was as important as what brand computer you bought. So there were columns about retailers and what they were doing and how they worked. A lot of review information. And again, because this is print before electronic, even before desktop publishing. So all the content here had to be meticulously gathered by phone calls and note-taking. It's a fantastic repository of what went on during that 4-year period. There were, to get interactive with the readership, when you have so many hundreds of thousands of people reading it each month, we had contests, and of course, contest winners. No Stack Overflow, no email, no nothing. So the open discussion was pages and pages each issue of people asking and answering questions among themselves, announcing things that they were going to do as small businesses. We had famous people like Roger Wagner writing multi-part articles. This one ran for about 30 issues about machine language programming. Now, you have a magazine that has articles of many pages of machine language programming in the same magazine that you saw that we had things that were of general interest. So this is covers the waterfront of content. But in each, and one of the biggest treasure troves here data-wise, is that each month there was a meticulously curated bestseller list of all the software that was for sale in various categories. And the publisher came out of Billboard magazine where they had done the top 30 records and all. So this was a well researched and curated list of what programs were popular. And we have a 48-month time series of what that data reveals. So an interesting thing that and this again goes back to I know this is the case because I lived it. We are now in a world that is 24/7 all the time, more information than you can imagine. But you imagine a world where the internet turned on for 1 day a month and then went off. And what you did was, there is a concept that comes out of military strategy called OODA, the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, and act. It is what we do in life all the time. Basically, we we observe what's going on, we orient to a situation, we decide what to do, and then we act. Well, if we do that in a conflict situation like military, or as the business people have adopted that into business, if we loop through that decision process faster than our competition, we gain an advantage. When SOFTALK was published on a monthly basis, we literally had folks around the country watch their mailbox, and when the magazine came in, if it didn't come to us, folks would read us over the telephone what was in the magazine, what were the positions in the bestseller list, because there was a month-long clock ticking now to decide what to do for the next 3 weeks. So we've got this incredible archive that is of an industry that bumped along on a 1-month cycle, and we've got 48 time slices of that movement. A remarkably interesting data set. So when after I circled the drain for about a year and then spent the next year climbing out, there was a period where about all I could do was find stuff and say, can we throw this away because we don't need it anymore? And I came across these 2 boxes of our SOFTALK magazines, which I had carted around all these years because they meant so much to me. And I meant to do something with them, but I never knew what. And now we know what, because we have our bonus round. And so we decided to start the SOFTALK Apple project. As soon as word got out among the folks that are friends of vintage microcomputer, Peter Kaler got in touch with us. He had started scanning for his own purposes. We got him the issues that he didn't have. And so now we have what we call the Kaler Foundation scan. Not all great issues. They were done hastily, but it's complete. So it lets us get started on our digital archive. So now we can start moving to OCR and crowdsourced editing of our content. Down in the lower left corner there, what we have is our first volunteer archivist. That's Chris Torrance. He's a nuclear physicist in Colorado by day, and at night he's a vintage computer enthusiast who loves assembly language programming. So he's our Roger Wagner volunteer archivist who is specifically curating all the corpora for Roger Wagner's contribution to the magazine. And of course, what that now lets us do is start getting to filling out the SOFTALKapple.com website, which is the repository of initially it'll be PDFs and web readable versions of the magazine. But what we're really interested in doing is this. The FactMiners project is kind of a pay-it-forward tribute to SOFTALK magazine because it was so instrumental to so many folks like myself. And so we want to create the open source platform of FactMiners, where the first of a kind fact cloud that we create will be of the SOFTALK Apple project, but then that will become a platform that's available for other citizen science grassroots history projects that want to do things similar to this. And something that, again, it goes back to our kind of bonus round and facing our own mortality. Something that we're very interested in doing on our project is intergenerational storytelling. And so we want to wrap not only the content of the magazine as it existed, but add to that the memories and stories of the folks that were either contributing to the magazine or who read, because actually what we find is more people come to us because they read the magazine and were inspired, their life was shaped by it, than folks who were around and actually made the magazine. So Timlin chased down, we've already got chasing down authors and finding out what they've done since then. And at one point I had as we were working on the initial site, I had a hard drive die, and I went to a local big box electronics store and bought a 1.5 terabyte hard drive for $80. And I thought to myself, remember that car I showed you that we traveled around, went from Baltimore to California? I've wondered, well, how many Apple floppy disks would I have to take with me on that trip to be 1.5 terabytes of data? Well, it turns out that our BMW, it was a 73 BMW 2002, sweet car, it would have had to have a convoy of 5 3/4 long bed tractor trailers behind us, filled to the brim with floppy disk drives that would have cost us $32 million. So these are the kind of stories that we need to share so that our younger generation knows that it wasn't so long ago that everything was very different. And our goal then is for the SOFTALK Apple project to be a honeypot for research and education. And we've already started to accomplish that. In the corner here, the last couple of pictures, that's Lane Nooney. She's a postdoc at NYU. She recently got her doctorate documenting Sierra Online. She's on our advisory board, and she's working with Kevin Driscoll of the Microsoft Research Social Networks group in Boston. And we're preparing a corpora for them, which I'm not allowed to tell you any more about right now, but it will be soon, and it will be exciting. So, oh my gosh. Okay. So what we really want to look at a bit here is FactMiners and how we're going to approach the generation of the fact cloud. So there's a few things I want to just kind of rip through and talk to you about in terms of how we're doing the FactMiners platform. We're using Neo4j, a graph database, and basically a graph database, if you take the simple ideas of graph theory, take the modern technology, wizardry of graph software technology, combine them, you get a graph database. Graph database is basically, you don't have to have rows and columns and tables and do joins and all that stuff. You basically are free to create semantic models of how do you think about things and create nodes and relationships. So that, for example, here's one that's a start of a simple model about a bookstore. And so you have people buying books, and these books, some people write books, some people purchase books. So basically a graph database is a way to, without the structure of a traditional relational database, to be able to create machine-readable concept models. And so you can grab something like Neo4j, open source, freely available graph database, and begin with simple queries to, in this case, I just recreated the model in the lower corner there just to demonstrate that graph databases are not nearly as exotic as you might think. So what's a metamodel subgraph? Because this is what we're doing with FactMiners. We want self-descriptive fact clouds so that when thin clients that do visualization and editing come and connect to a fact cloud, they can configure not only workflows, but what the structural information in the fact cloud is. So this one, if we look at what is a metamodel, metamodel is a model of models. So the ones that we just looked at, the one on the left, which says a graph is full of nodes and relationships connect nodes. So what that model then does is tell us that the model on the right is a legal model because there's no connections of edges to edges. So what's a subgraph? Within a graph, if there are no connections between a subset of nodes in that relationship, in that database, then that's called a subgraph. So you could pluck it out and it wouldn't affect everything else. If you intentionally make that subgraph a model of the rest of the data in the database, you get a metamodel subgraph, which is the information that is used by your visualization and editing clients to configure dynamically to a instance of these fact clouds. So what's a metamodel subgraph good for? Well, besides the obvious things like data discovery, entry, and validation, there is the opportunity to do increased computational analytics. And so for a really quick example, because I know I'm running short on time, but I promise I'll get through. I'll get through. I have to stay calm. For a real quick example, one of my undergraduate majors was journalism, and there was a saying, a dog bites a man is no big deal, but if a man bites a dog, it's news. So if I were to create a metamodel subgraph that represented this Man Bites Dog news agency, we would have queries that can do things like look at the data in a database and say, well, I found some news, I found some stuff that's not news, and I found some stuff that we need to do some further fact-checking on. So a metamodel subgraph is an incredibly flexible way to have a semantically rich model that is extensible, yet gives you incredible power over validating and discovering facts in your data. Okay, that's what would be in the metamodel subgraph. Well, there's two partitions: structure and process. The structure part has to be able to wend together the complex. One of the things that's challenging about SOFTALK is it's a commercial magazine. Commercial magazines are among the most complex document structures that you can imagine because of the intentional wend your way through. We want you to look at ads and get lost and whatnot. So the structure of the magazine is complicated. And then there's all the stuff that the magazine's about. So let's take an example. I told you there were bestseller lists in the magazine, and how would I model that? I've done some, I did some quick screenshots. I was going to do this live, but I did some quick screenshots, and if anybody's interested, we can look at it live. But basically, this is the first query, and what it does is it lays in the basic structure of the magazine. So the central dot that is surrounded by the parts of a page, that's a page in the magazine and all the kinds of things that might be on that page. And the tail that's coming out of it, it shows that a page is in an issue, the issue is in a volume of the magazine, and the last thing in that tail is the magazine in total itself. The magazine is about stuff. So off of that node, that tail end node, you now see yellow dots, which are the is about relationship. And what this says is the magazine is about things like people, companies, places, and products. So now we've got the structure at one end, and we've got the what it's about at the other end. That bestseller list had within it a structure which was there were line items that said this month the #1 product was a game called Choplifter, written by a guy named Dan Gorlin, who was the developer, and it was published by Broderbund Software. So we've added the structure of that one piece of an entry on the list, and then to find where facts live. This is where the queries come together. What we do now is when we enter and discover the fact that says Choplifter by Dan Gorlin, Broderbund, when we enter that fact, we make an on-list relationship for that structural element to the product, and then we reach through the product and put developer and publisher links to the product, company that published the product, and the person who developed it. So this is the way that, as you can see, that what we're doing is developing that structure. We're saying what the magazine's about, and then what facts are the sightings, the instances of those things as they're discovered in the magazine. So that's what we would be curating and doing our games around. It's the idea of folks finding and making these connections to build the fact cloud of what SOFTALK Apple is about. I won a domain modeling contest with this stuff we've just looked at, and somebody tweeted, "Oh my, this looks like SciDoc CRM." And up to this point, we didn't even know what museum informatics was, and so I chased down the CRM, and it was like deja vu all over again, because I said, "Oh, I have this unusual background that we bring." Well, part of that unusual background is after the microcomputer industry, Timlin and I went really deep into object technology. I was a executive consultant in the object technology practice at IBM Global Services, and I led a skunkworks in the mid-90s where we did, we made frameworks that were called executable business models in distributed Smalltalk. And so I have objectified process as well as done traditional object-oriented design. And when I looked at the CRM, I saw this great division between what they call persistent items and temporal entities. Most folks look at that and are confused like deer in the headlights because they haven't written software that objectifies process. And so I was going, oh man, I've been there and I've done that. Let me look deeper at it. And as I looked at it, I started seeing things in the diagrams that violated some of the graph theoretic things that I mentioned earlier as far as how a graph can be addressed. And I've started a personal learning network and communicating with folks working on the CRM. And what I'm working on at this point is a graph interpretation of the SIDOC CRM so that we can do computational analytics on it rather than just use it as pictures to inspire developing software. This is a picture of, I've done an article on FactMiners.com where I describe taking CRM properties and rather than describe them as relationships on CRM class entities, that they're just another form of CRM class and that they should be objectified as first-class objects. And then the way that it really kind of sends home how this can, why the process activity objects that are in the CRM are so interesting and important. I mentioned the executable business model skunkworks that I had. Well, this is a high-level UML model of a agent-based role actor executable model. And what I've done is taken some of the high-level SIDOC CRM conceptual reference model of museums for the CRM and laid them over where they would fit onto an object-oriented process model for microservices. Okay, and and I'm real close to being done. And so if I were to look at a chunk of our activity as a curational activity, I've drilled down here and I'm saying we're going to lay out and segment that page. That page which would show me that our players who are actors are doing curational activity. The things that they're doing are modifications on our digital pages, and those activities involve, in the case of segmenting, what's on that page measurements. So these piece parts are in the CRM. It's just that they aren't presented very well, and there hasn't been too much effort to look at how to write software from the activity-oriented stuff that's in the model as opposed to just rely on the ontological structural stuff. So that's what we're interested in. That's what we're working on. When I wrap up, I can just basically say there's all kinds of things we would be willing and interesting in helping you do as far as making access to our digital archive available. We're here to meet and connect and collaborate with folks who might have similar interests. So thank you all for sticking to the bloody end. Thank you.
I gotta say, Jim, you did this with a lot of terminology for this late conference, but that's cool. That's cool. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of how you arrived at the decision to pursue a sort of semantic modeling approach as opposed to a more sort of conventional, knowledge model. Given that, I mean, certainly in our field, there have been a lot of attempts at that and very few outright success.
Sure. Sure. Well, the interesting thing is that that when my cancer battle was particularly grueling, and I literally couldn't find the keys on the keyboard when I could think in English, but a word salad came out. And so as I started to come back together and be able to think and all again, I met Timlin in the doctoral program in mathematical social sciences at UC Irvine back in the late 70s, early 80s. And so I knew about graph theory and social networks. And one of the first things that I read about as I started to reconnect with the world and read about technology were graph databases. And I went, oh man, that stuff makes sense to me. And when I found the boxes of magazines and my thought went back to the mid-90s when we did executable business models doing self-descriptive object-oriented frameworks, I thought graph databases, self-descriptive graph databases, SOFTALK magazine, we've got something to do.
So it's almost like, it sounds like you're considering the archive as really just one of many possible proofs of concept.
Oh yeah, at IBM it would be called a FOAK, F-O-A-K, a first of a kind. And so the SOFTALK Apple project is the sandbox for the initial fact cloud and the initial development effort to create the platform. But once that platform's available, we hope it will be as interesting and available to literally any museum, archive, or library that would want to do something similar.
And I assume you're familiar with the research-based projects.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I mean, Dominic Oldman and Barry Norton are two of the people on my personal learning network of CRM. And before, as I prepared this stuff, I had questions for them, which have started the ball rolling on some really interesting stuff.
So that's actually something a resource I would recommend to people. If you're interested in seeing sort of how semantic modeling of data potentially work in the museum sector, the research-based project, which is funded by Churn and run by Dominic Oldman.
And they're funded. They were the top IT guys. They still are in the British Museum. And ResearchSpace is researchspace.org for the website, and the Twitter account is @ResearchSpace. And they're super folks. They're doing great work.
Any questions for Jim? This might be something that warrants direct conversation rather than questions.
What? Oh, and there will be a director's cut of this that we'll put up on the website, and I'll actually get through. So, thank you all.